Welcome back, guys. It's craft time. Today's video is going to be all about the Dollar Tree. I know that decor can be really expensive at times, but I'm going to show you ways that you can go grab the cute fall or Halloween items off of the shelf at Dollar Tree and turn them into something that you want to display in your home. So let's go ahead and get started. So to begin, I grabbed some of the concrete pumpkins, some of the owls, and some of the foxes that you can find at the Dollar Tree, along with the little plaque sign, pumpkin sign that they have there that has the glitter writing all over it. Then I have here just other florals, ribbons, and pieces that I've gotten from there, and pretty much everything in this video I am going to be using came from the Dollar Tree, with the exception of some of my paints or hot glue or things like that, but all of the actual items that I'm working with or extra decor and embellishments are from the Dollar Tree. So let's go ahead and get started with the pumpkins. To start with these pumpkins, I just wiped them down to make sure there was no excess dirt or anything on them, and then I decided to use my Waverly chalk paints or my folk art chalk paints to give them a makeover, as well as with the wax. So for the big orange pumpkin, I don't like how it's very bright white on the sides, so I'm using some, it's I think called hazelnut is the color, and I'm going to use that to trace over those white parts to kind of mute that down a little bit into the crevices of the pumpkin, and then also give it a little bit of dimension on the sides of the pumpkin by taking my brush with a little bit of paint on it and dry brushing the sides. That way when I wax over, you'll have two different colors going on and it'll give it a little bit more of a dimension. So then after I painted that and I'm letting it dry, I move on to my next one. I am doing the folk art color. I don't know what it's called, but it's a gray from folk art. I'm just going to paint that entire pumpkin and let it dry. Oh, I did paint the stems of all the pumpkins. I didn't like, the one was gold and the other two, I just didn't like the color of it. So I'm using, I think it's called Truffle from Waverly as well, and just painting those to give them more of a natural color. And then I moved on from there. But for this one, again, I'm just painting the entire thing, this gray, and my plan is going to be distress it back to let some of that white that I already had on there come through. So that was simple. And then for the little, like a flatter round one, I'm just going to do a white wax over top of it. I already kind of like the look of it, but I just want to mute it a little bit more and give it a little bit of a different feel. So I just paint that on and then rub it back down or wipe it off with a paper towel. I wiped that one off. When I'm doing the other ones, I kind of just like blotch it off because I don't want to take too much off. But I did use the Waverly clear. Sorry, I'm kind of all messed up in my order here. Let me just move on. From there, I let those dry and then I moved on to my owls. For the owls, I'm using, I believe, the color Truffle from Waverly. It's chalk paint, and I'm just painting over the entire surface. I'm also doing that with my second owl with white chalk paint. I believe that one's from Art Minds. All of my chalk paints are Waverly, Art Minds, or Folk Art. They all seem to work just fine for me. I don't have a preference in them really. I go with what color my eye is drawn to, and I go from there. So I just painted those up and set them to the side. The first coat on those, because they're so slick, doesn't really matter. You're going to definitely have to do 2, probably 3 coats. It's just a patience game. If you get that first coat on there, then you don't have to worry about it so much, because then your next round will have something better to stick to. So I just covered those, and then I moved on to my foxes, and I wanted to update their look a little bit. So I did one of them in the color Truffle, and then I did the other one in this pretty green called Moss from Waverly, because I just think it's a beautiful color. I just painted their entire selves with these colors and then let it dry and then gave it another coat. I had to make sure I really got in that tail because there's so much detail in there to make sure I fully covered it, but loving how these are looking so far, and then going to let those dry. For this pumpkin sign, And sorry guys, I'm doing everything in like a big batch because you have to wait for paint to dry, so you want to just keep things moving. So for my pumpkin, for the pumpkin sign, I started with scraping off all of the glitter. Now I have one of these like window scrapers, but you can just use straight sandpaper and it would be fine too. But I wanted to go ahead and scrape it all off and then get that in the trash can and then sand it down just to make sure that that texture of that glitter doesn't come through, and then when you paint over it you can't see what's behind it. So my plan for this is to make it a reversible sign. So I'm going to start by just using some of my orange acrylic paint and covering this up to try to make it all more of a muted one color. And then I'm going to let that dry. I didn't film it, but I did paint the back of it with my black acrylic because I do want to make it reversible, so I want to make sure both sides look good. While that was drying, I jumped back to my pumpkins. Again, I am waxing these pumpkins, so with the big like fatter one, I just used Waverly white wax on that. I painted it on, I wiped it off. That one was pretty much good to go. For the other two, I made my own white wax. So the Waverly white wax is actually more of a cream color, and I wanted more of a bright white. So you can make your own colored wax. You don't have to have specific colors that you go out and buy. If you just get some of the clear wax and then add your colors to it, I always use chalk paint to tint it. I've never tried it with a different type of paint, but I've heard that you can use other types of paint. But you just want a little bit. You don't need a lot of paint, and you don't want a lot of paint because you don't want to ruin the integrity of the wax. So I just took a little bit of my white chalk paint, put it into my clear wax, mixed it together, and now I have a bright white wax. So with that, I'm just going to brush that onto my orange pumpkin, and with this one, I did more of like a blotting style because I wanted to not just wipe it. It's a very smooth surface. I didn't want to just wipe it all back off. So I just kind of blotted the paper towel, like wrapped it up and then peeled it back off to get a little bit of a texture and look that I was going for. That orange is very bright, so I wanted to just mute that down a little bit, and I think it's turned out really well. Just be careful with fingerprints because when you're using the wax and it's still wet, you can definitely leave fingerprints in there. So just be aware of that. And then I went ahead and distressed down my second pumpkin that I painted gray. I just used a baby wipe and wiped it back down in the areas that I wanted the white to show through. And then that one I went ahead and sealed with white wax as well, because with chalk paint you need to make sure that you're sealing it in or else it will come right off. So those ones, while the wax is drying, I moved back over to my cute little foxes. Like I said, they needed 2 coats of paint. I did the second coat. After that dried, I am also white waxing these. Now, the reason I'm white waxing these in particular is because they have these little grooves and different details and textures on them, and if I put the white wax on and then take it off, it's going to leave it in those indents and really like give that piece some dimension and just add a little bit of an elevation and make it super cute. So that's what I did. I just painted it on, and then same thing, I kind of just blotted it because it's a very smooth surface, and rubbed on the areas where I feel like I got a little bit too much wax. And then these pieces are done as well. Just set them to the side and let them dry. Chalk paint and wax is like, you guys, it's just so easy to do, and it just really takes your piece to the next level. So after those were done, I was working on my owls. Now with them, I did 2 steps. So with the owl that was brown and truffle, I did a little bit of a distress on him to make the like underneath brown that he originally was come through to give it like a little bit of dimension. And then I also used the white wax that I had made and put that over him and wiped all of that off. And then as he was drying, I decided, well, that might be a little bit too white, so I did take some of the antiquing wax from Waverly that was watered down and put that back on some spots just to kind of give him a little bit of just dimension and character back. And then for the white one, I did my white wax, but also the antiquing wax. So I went in with the antiquing wax first, very watered down because I didn't want it to be too dark, and I wiped that all over him and then wiped off the excess. And then as that was drying, I also went back over with my white wax that I made that's really bright and did that in certain areas. So now he's kind of got that textured look on him as well. And I love how they turned out too. They were super cute. I did distress a little bit around their eyes and feathers so that you can kind of see those popping through. And I just love how they turned out. When I say I'm distressing, I'm again using a baby wipe or a wet paper towel because my chalk paint comes right off of those with just a little bit of pressure. So after you seal it in though, you shouldn't have an issue. Now for the pumpkin side, I have decided that the one side I want it to be Halloween and the other side I want it to be fall. So I went ahead and painted over my orange that I had originally painted. I painted that entire thing black. And then I came back with a dry brush of the orange and I dry brushed streaks back over it to kind of reshape the pumpkin and show that, but also give it a little pop of color. And then I went onto my computer, styled out Happy Halloween, and then I traced it. Usually I would just print it out and then use my carbon paper and trace it, but I didn't feel like messing with the printer. So I literally just traced it off my screen very carefully. I didn't like push hard at all to mess up my screen. Don't yell at me. So I did just like a rough sketch of that, and then I used carbon paper to transfer that onto my pumpkin. So I just put it down where I wanted it to, put the carbon paper underneath, and then I more neatly traced that outline that I had made to get it on there so that I know where the word needs to be. And then I used my gold paint pen, which I have a Krylon paint pen. However, they do sell paint pens at the Dollar Tree. I used what I had because I really enjoy the paint pen and how it works. But they do sell paint pens at the Dollar Tree, not a big deal at all. I know I have a couple of them somewhere, gold, silver, white, black. Other than that, I'm not really sure. I haven't bought any of their other ones, but I just traced that and colored it in gold. I added a little bit more gold in with my dry brush strokes, and then we're going to make a cute little bow with it. This ribbon and the little sprigs of berries that I have came from Dollar Tree. I do have a tutorial on how to make a bow. You can use that to size it down, make it smaller, make it bigger. I can link that in the description for you if you are new to bow making or a little intimidated by it. It's super easy. So I just made a little tiny one with the sprigs on the side. I used some floral wire to tie it up, get it all together, and then I was ready to move on to my other side. So for the other side of it, I wanted it to be white and black, like a more like farmhouse type style. So I painted over my black with my white chalk paint. After that was dry, I took a really fine grit sand paper and I went along like so that it would leave kind of marks in the shape of a pumpkin, kind of like rounded. And then after that, I wiped it off. I did a dry brush technique again. If you don't know what that is, you put a little bit of paint on the tip of your bristles, you dab it off a little bit to where you just barely have any paint, and you very lightly brush over what you're doing, and it'll just leave just a little bit and kind of give it like a distressed type of look without having to fully distress something. So I did that again to give it that pumpkin shape. I traced those lines of where they would be. And then I was ready to add my lettering. I did the exact same thing. I just went on my computer. I designed, the little saying that I wanted. I traced it and then I carbon papered it onto the pumpkin. And then I was going to use my black paint pen that I have, and it is out. So I just used a Sharpie to go ahead and color it in. And then I came back over top of it and just painted over it. I could have just painted it and that would have been fine, but I find that it's easier for the paint to grab and me not to have to worry about controlling it so much and getting messy if it already has like a suggested area for it to go to. So that's why I did it with a Sharpie first. I just painted on over it, and now it is ready for the final touches. Now, my camera died in the middle of this, so I am gonna kind of just show you what I did without fully showing you what I did. So basically I have these florals from the Dollar Tree. I snipped one of the flowers from each of these off of it. I kept one of the leaves. I did trim that leaf down a little bit because I felt like it was a little too long, and I did that for both sides, so made sure that it was matching, symmetrical but not like exact. And then I took some of the wired jute that they have there, which is right here. This stuff has a wire in the middle of it, and I used that to attach them all together. So I, in the middle of it, wrapped it around there using the middle of the jute. That way I have tails on it. And then once it was nice and secure, I snipped off the extra ends, not the flower part, but the end of that as they were coming through. I snipped off that part, and then I just hot glued that to the middle of my sign where I thought it looked good. I took my finger, I wrapped the jute around like this because it has a wire, it'll stay, and I just wrap it. That part's really crusty, I don't know what that is. It will stay because it has a wire, and you just wrap it around and it gives it like a fun little twirl. And that side is completely done. So now that we have that done, I do have these little Velcro like little sticker things, and that's what I use to attach the bow to the other side. I didn't put it on yet when I was finishing that side because I wanted to make sure that it was flat while I was still working on the opposite side. But the reason I'm doing this with Velcro is because I want this to be reversible. So if it has a bow on one side, it's not going to sit flat when the back of that is to your door. So if I want the Hello Fall on there, I want it to sit flat on the door without seeing the extra stuff that doesn't belong there. So now they can just take the bow off, store that away, have their cute Hello Fall sign without having to worry about it. But then they still have the 2-for-1 sign because once, you know, the Halloween comes, they can just turn it over, put their bow on, and then they have the separate sign. So I think it turned out super, super cute. I just tied a piece of twine back on to hang it from. Originally, I had a little different plan, so I cut that off in the beginning because I was going to do something a little different. But then I changed my mind because I do that all the time. But I just wanted to show you guys how you can upcycle Dollar Tree items to make them look like they came from somewhere else. I just love how these projects turned out. I'm very excited about them. I'm excited for fall. So if you guys can let me know what was your favorite project that we did today, just let me know below, and let me know if you guys give this a try. I have a couple more things from the Dollar Tree that I do plan on flipping and turning into something else or upcycling as well, so just keep an eye out for those videos. So yeah, if you're new here, consider subscribing to my channel, coming back and hanging out and learning new things with me. And if you are returning, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Always glad to have you here. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and I will take you in for a closer look and see you next time.